YouTube from the start has always been a breeding ground for creators to flourish without the help of major networks and financial backing. These incredibly hardworking individuals evidently shaped the image of YouTube and how content is being produced in the 20th century. Since YouTube's rise in popularity, the die-hard fans of fashion brands like Raf Simons and Japanese labels such as Undercover have now birthed a new generation of extremely niche communities. These viewers now subscribe into a populace of dedicated fashion channels more often catered to the male audience. Now, this growing community on YouTube still doesn't produce the same numbers as the most followed men's fashion accounts, but these channels have pushed through to create healthy audiences who happen to be fashion nerds over brand history and designer craftsmanship. With pickup videos and unboxings still at large, this type of content is now complemented by video titles such as Rick Owens' Fall-Winter Collection, or maybe someone talking about Margiela's past runway shows with a splash of personal passion on a 10-minute video.
The first series on my channel covering Mason Martin Margiela, one show at a time.
Now, while creating a fashion channel in hopes to be seen by a major brand for financial gain is still a viable stream of income, but this is now far from the only lucrative option for content creators in 2020. And the other main route that many of these YouTubers are taking is to drop their own clothing brands targeted to their specific audiences.
But I get a lot of questions about you guys asking me about a brand and how to create a brand, how to start a brand, all that good stuff, you know, screen printing, all that, manufacturers. My brand personally is funded by me. The idea was created up by me. I have the pending trademark, and I figured I want to show you guys how my brand develops and just kind of be more in tune, man.
These brands have started to adopt the same release systems as streetwear. They tend to sell out just as quickly as brands like Supreme, Bape, and Off-White collaborations. And speaking from experience, there has been many times I've logged into YouTubers' websites and within minutes, it's already sold out or the site ends up crashing. Now, this entire system of efficient e-commerce and happy customers is the exact thing that is giving the retail spaces a run for their money. Much to fashion runway buyers' surprise, these brands may never see a retail rack in their life. A majority of these collections are typically debuted in smaller quantities online, which helps create brand scarcity and exclusivity. The product is then promoted on various social media platforms to their small yet highly engaged audiences, and pricing can range anywhere from $30 t-shirts, $90 cargos, to even $500 hoodies. And now I know much of you watching might be saying to yourself, well, this is nothing new. And to tell you the truth, you're absolutely right. It isn't anything new. And in fact, this marketing tactic is a proven system that has most definitely been solidified in women's wear long before menswear has made a name for itself on YouTube. The fashion industry has already been throwing their money at existing niche audiences to sell their products. And for one example, we could bring up people like Daniel Bernstein, who signed a multi-million-dollar partnership with Nordstrom's.
Think of them as the reality TV stars of the social media generation.
They put us in a spot that was at the end of the runway so that we could get a great shot of the girls walking. Also a very visible spot for other photographers because we were all dressed in the collection.
Designers paying them up to tens of thousands of dollars for a single post. The influencer market now worth an estimated $2 billion and expected to reach $10 billion by 2020. So moving into 2020, these types of business relationships will still grow
throughout the women's category. But when it comes to men's fashion and streetwear on YouTube, much of this is still an untapped market. The retail and high-end brands will soon need to reconsider throwing money into these niche street-style communities to narrow down their target market. But we can talk more about that later. So before we talk about some examples of YouTube fashion brands, let's quickly talk about the evolution of where this idea started. Typically, YouTubers, whether they're focused on creating clothing content or not, will eventually create merch to satisfy their growing fan base. For example, someone like Casey Neistat creates his own merch during his days of being active on the platform, but in no way do we look to him for fashion advice.
Inside this box, well, I haven't seen them yet. Inside this box is something amazing. Now, I've always wanted to do merch.
Typically, the bare bones way of creating merch is selling simple t-shirts with a graphic print, or maybe hoodies and a hat to go with it. And if we take channels like Tony D2 Wild and Bullet RC for example, both are far past 500,000 subscribers and always supply ready-to-wear garments like screen printed tees, hats, pants, and jackets. And more obviously, screen printing t-shirts can be a lucrative cash grab for much of these creators. But Tony and Bull over the years have moved on to creating a simple cut and sew brand that is usually made in China using things like AliExpress or Taobao.
But one website, there's two websites I'm gonna tell you to check out. One is Alibaba and the other one is Taobao.
Now, even though Tony and Bull's audiences usually only refer to them for sneaker advice, they still use this method of selling their own brand to target their market. And in this past 5 to 6 years, creating merch for your subscribers has been a go-to system for satisfying an ever-changing fan base. So from the mid-2000s up until the late 2010s, much if not all brands coming from fashion YouTubers were not leveling up their game when it comes to creating a respectable streetwear or fashion brand. And in addition, these brands weren't always taken serious because of the type of content that was being produced. Videos filled with memes and ruthless comment sections has a potential to hurt the credibility of a brand and how serious people want to perceive it.
Canada Goose, Gore-Tex jacket, 1,000. Supreme Louis Vuitton, too much, like 10,000.
So in combination of lower quality merch lines with simple logos and an avalanche of possibly cringy content, what's been missing is someone to step up to the plate and create a respectable cut and sew brand that can separate itself from being just a simple merch line to a bona fide business. And for those who have been avid watchers to niche fashion channels on YouTube, can vouch that it's people like Jacob Keller and Cole McBride who might have helped this community to take the next step. Much of Keller's ambition to consistently post on YouTube since the mid-2000s sparked a new generation of fashion channels to follow in his footsteps. And fast forwarding to 2018, Jacob and Cole dropped their first line called Bare Knuckles. This brand was a step in the right direction because of Jacob's willingness to create garments that were totally left field from the basic graphic tee and merch line.
The way that I started YouTube back in the day was this individual right here shouted me out. I made him his like little intro, right? And he shouted me out, got me like my first like core group of subscribers. Yep. And sadly, he does not make YouTube anymore.
I left the reins to him.
Nah, never.
Look at him, bro.
And much of the aesthetic was 3 steps ahead of what was previously being made from past creators. The collection featured wash denims, vintage wash t-shirts, and crop sweaters, which aesthetically had the same feel of higher-end garments found at top-tiered retailers. And with Keller's success over the years on YouTube, he was able to cultivate a community that consistently wanted to know what pieces he was wearing. And that same question from subscribers is exactly what led his collection to selling out shortly after it released. So while Jacob and Cole might have broke some barriers for fashion YouTube, other creators like Magnus Ronning also had his own take. So Magnus, as I understand, had came into the game of YouTube blowing up using tons of memes and comical relief to chat about fashion. It was a sort of tongue-in-cheek way of entertaining young and old fashion heads to poke fun at hypebeasts.
I can already taste the tears of the insulted hypebeasts.
This style of meme videos brought his channel well over 200,000 subscribers, and as more time passed, Magnus used the opportunity he had in front of him to create a brand. And with this type of content, you would imagine Magnus slapping together some meme graphic tees and call it a day. But instead, he was quick to release his brand called Ronning. His brand featured some well-made denim jackets with some green paisley print, some pinkish colored twill work pants, and some other items that speak to his own mantra. And while much of Ronning's content had skyrocketed at its prime because of the comedic entertainment, his brand still is noteworthy for creating well thought out pieces unlike other YouTubers. Now moving into 2020, we have more brands coming from people like Ken Iijima, who began his journey on YouTube with documenting their daily life and making bold decisions to move to Japan.
I don't know what that's about.
Ken and Ringo later founded the street style brand Vujade, and viewers get an inside look of the brand, but most importantly, their daily life. They both understand that YouTube is an extremely useful tool to engage their audience, but at the same time, let both entities thrive on its own. But why Vujade is noteworthy is because of their choice of going straight into cut and sew pieces, instead of taking the safer route of mundane screen printed t-shirts. And their first drop included paint splattered sweatshirts, which was applied by hand with acrylic, and bondage cargo pants inspired by Helmut Lang. And to top it all off, it's all made from Japanese milled cotton and available exclusively through their website. Ken and Ringo's brand Vujade tends to sell out extremely quick, and even though it was the debut launch of their brand, people are already reselling their goods on GRAILED. Audiences from across the world have a chance to get to know the creators and perhaps have a chance to chat with them if time permits. This type of B2C business is more oftentimes what fashion is missing, especially dealing with more well-known names in the industry. But all three of these channels are only some examples of what's happening on YouTube and creating your own brand. And I think the most important thing to take away from these accounts is that none of these brands debuted their collections as purely merch for fans. Instead, these creators have put in their hard work into thoughtful quality garments for people with similar interests to enjoy. And why these YouTubers have the upper hand when marketing their products is because most of the time their videos are flooded with comments and suggestions that they get to hear firsthand. This is information that a normal marketing agency would beg for when trying to sell their product. But since this relationship with people like Ken, Jacob, and Magnus are so personal, they can make products specifically tailored to their audience's needs. Now, while some of these aspects for these brands can be groundbreaking for fashion YouTubers, another type of fashion community has been starting to emerge on the platform. And to explain this properly, previously the format for fashion YouTubers was to showcase three primary topics: unboxings, pickup vlogs, outfit challenges, and sometimes a little bit about fashion predictions. And much of the previous and current creators would rack in their views with countless mystery boxes and purposely purchasing excessively expensive amounts of clothing regardless of whether they like the brands or not.
I'm going to be exploring this entire mall and buying one pair of shoes from every store.
These type of videos created the idea that if you bought something expensive, then it must be cool, as if this item hypothetically would higher your social status in some way. But the root of the issue for creators to make this type of content is that there is a lack of understanding for what you're buying. Oftentimes, YouTubers get caught up in purchasing hyped brands to triple their view count in hopes to get noticed. And this lack of knowledge for brand history later translates to an ignorance of an entire fashion context.
In recent years, a lot of streetwear brands have been collaborating with high-end luxury brands and their fashion worlds have been merging. People have a responsibility to know about the brands that they're wearing, like know the history and some facts and stuff like that, or is it just fashion and they can do whatever they want?
People shouldn't press you too much on it, but at the same time, if you decked out head to toe with a hat to the sock to the shoe, give me a street, give me a name, man.
Like, I skate, and I've been wearing like skatewear for like the longest time, and now it's like a sort of a fashion. Whatever you wear, I feel like you should know at least something about it. Then like if you get called out on it, then you just look dumb, and you're just literally, that's how you expose the people that are doing it for the hype.
Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you have to know 110% of all history of everything you buy, but in this niche fashion community, you are punished or laughed at if you don't.
Let's talk about these off-whites. What do you think about the off-white Jordan 1s? Because you don't wear that many Jordans, right?
What?
Do you wear a lot of Jordans or no?
Not really, but
Okay.
I like the off-white ones.
But in this new age of fashion and youth, we are riddled with opinions acting as facts, when in actuality, everyone is entitled to their opinion. The general understanding of why someone needs to know context or history in streetwear and fashion is oddly subjective, and oftentimes can be a fallacy created by the consumers themselves. But since fashion enthusiasts are trying to float away from hypebeast or flex culture, emergence of new content that is starting to surface. Videos from individuals like the Fashion Archive will give you his own perspective as a fashion journalist and give you his detailed thoughts on past or present well-known designers. His content will give you a complete overview of new collections of prestigious fashion houses, but most importantly, give you analytical commentary to go with it. And maybe I'm speaking from personal perspective, but that might be exactly what men's fashion YouTube has been missing. And to add to this topic of fashion enthusiasts, we now have people like Bliss Foster who've been creating content around complete deep analysis of Margiela runway shows. Instead of rinsing and repeating expensive fashion unboxings, Bliss will take you on a journey through his interpretation of intensely deep conversations breaking down designers' artistic aesthetics. He really has his own effortless way of using linguistics to ingrain the deeper meaning of design that would otherwise only be said in textbooks. And now finally, for the past 5 years, viewers have been lucky enough to have Reggie from The Casual, who breaks down the raw complexities of Japanese and international street fashion. Reggie came into the game understanding the void between the inspiring fashion of Japanese locals and the lack of understanding from the rest of the world. But not only is Reggie filling a much needed gap in fashion information, he also uses his platform to help up-and-coming streetwear brands become more successful. And why this is worth mentioning is because these newer designers not only get advice, but they are getting it from someone who has experience in the fashion industry and also has the know-how to explain it in a comprehensive way. So ultimately, men's streetwear and fashion YouTube as a whole is getting stronger day by day, with more channels creating more well thought out collections, combined with a more conscious fashion channel influence. We are now seeing a new generation of fashion YouTube emerging. And as I previously stated, much of men's streetwear and fashion on YouTube is an untapped market compared to their women counterparts. So maybe in this new decade, we can see the fruits of their labors come true. But the last thing I'll say about this topic, since much of this is very unpredictable and also the history is being written as we speak, I would love to hear what your thoughts are in the comment section below. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you guys and girls keep it locked right here for all your latest information from clothing, music to culture. It's your boy Keezy, and I'm out. Peace.
You want to do, and it's just gonna take a minute, but it's gonna work out. Like if you try to cut corners and you put costumes on to do shit, yeah, you gonna get straight, but at what cost? You know what I'm saying? And how you feel when you do this shit for you, 100% for you. You could grind and stay up for 5 or 6 days and not really be tired because it's for you.